Words of Money Podcast, episode 51. Fide one. Hello, guys and gals. This is Tess Wicks, host of the Words of Money Podcast, and you are listening to the show where we talk to other women from around the globe about personal finance with their best money tips and tricks. Today on the show, I am interviewing Jocelyn Paonita Pearson. She's a dear friend of mine, but also the founder of an amazing online solution for helping college students graduate college debt-free. That's right, she has come up with the solution because she herself was able to go to college and get her college paid for completely with college scholarships. And so she has taken that information and knowledge that she has with that process and turned it into an online business called the Scholarship System, where she helps other people do the same. Jocelyn is also just a savvy friend of mine. She knows how to make money and put her money to work for her. So being able to graduate college debt-free and go into the world, and now with the money that she makes, instead of having to pay off debt, she can go put her money to work for her and create more passive income streams for herself. And that is what we are talking about today. So you'll hear how she has used real estate and turned them into rental properties to create a lower life expenses, living expenses, and make some money on top, as well as written a book and now created her business, which massively produces some great passive income for her. That's what you're going to get. So without further ado, here is Creating Passive Income Streams with Jocelyn Paonita Pearson. Jocelyn, it is great to have you. So glad you can join us.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us, what are you most grateful for right now?
Well, we talked a little bit about this before we started the podcast interview, but I just got back from Europe, literally, 36 hours ago or something like that. And I was telling you how awesome that trip was. And I'm so grateful for that right now. And just the ability to be able to do that. So it was almost 2 weeks in Europe, and I worked a little bit here and there from Europe. And it's just, I'm so fortunate to be able to do that. So that's definitely what I'm most grateful for right now.
Absolutely. I love it. In the introduction, I talked a little bit about your work and the work you do at the Scholarship System, but I want you to tell your story on how you got here. How did it unfold all the way back from when you were applying for scholarships into creating a company that helps other people get those?
Sure. So back when I was in high school, I had a teacher make us watch Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. And I still reference Dave Ramsey like he's my best friend. Actually, one of his books is right next to me. But he just focuses largely on being debt-free. And I was only, 17 then or so. But my family, I had seen what debt can do to families. And it just really drove home the point that I realized I never wanted to be buried in debt. I never wanted to have to worry about that. And this was at a point where I was about to go to college. And so I realized if I want to be debt free, I cannot take out student loans for school. So I started looking into scholarships and applying. And this was my junior year. And before I knew it, I was hearing nothing back. I was getting so overwhelmed and just frustrated. Nothing was working. And I realized in my senior year that I was applying to complete scams, which there are so many out there. So as I realized that, I kind of tweaked my strategy over and over. And before I knew it, I finally received 1 award letter, and then 2 award letters, and then 3, and so on and so forth. And I kind of kept tweaking this strategy, this system, if you will, for applying for scholarships, to the point where in the end of college, I was able to completely pay for college and graduate debt-free. I actually got paid to go to school. It covered my rent, my groceries, and everything. So that was kind of how it all started, but I was just supposed to go into my corporate job and go on my merry way. And I had no idea that this would actually turn into my future. So when I graduated college and completely debt-free, I had friends contact me and say, Jocelyn, how did you do this? They needed more money for their junior year, senior year, or even some of them were going into their sophomore year. And what I realized was each person I was telling them the same thing over and over. I sounded like a broken record machine. And it dawned on me that this was a process. This was a system. This is a systematic thing that people can follow to do what I did. And with that, I realized also at the same time, this debt crisis that our country is facing with student loans and being in so much debt, and the possibility of even losing a generation to student debt, I realized I needed to share what I was sharing with my friends with as many people as possible. And at the same time, I also realized that this could be a passive income stream for me. So I went ahead and I turned what I was doing, my system, if you will, into a book. And that was supposed to be the end of it. I went back into my corporate job and I just had this kind of passive income side project where I had a book that people were downloading to help them find scholarships. But a year later, I had the inclination to turn it into something bigger. And so in that year, from when I launched the book to when I officially quit my corporate job, I set a goal. I figured out how much I would need to pursue this as a full-time thing. I saved up. And then finally, a year later, I tried to prove this concept. Can I turn it into something bigger? And lo and behold, I could. And as soon as I got a few customers, I quit my corporate job and started building this out. And this past July has been a year of the scholarship system is what it turned into. And that is how I got to Europe. It's just building these passive income streams and turning it into a real business and leaving that corporate gig that was keeping me tied down with X amount of vacation days. So that's really in as quick as I can. That's how I really got to where I am.
Awesome. Thank you. That was very detailed. And you being a good friend of mine, I always admire you and the strategy and thought that goes into everything that you do. I mean, you were able to strategize from high school to go to college and not have to pay for it and have someone else pay for it. And then graduating without student loan debt is so freeing and so valuable in our society today. But you continued. You didn't just like, all right, I'm done. Now I go and I work. You wrote a book that was just kind of like this side project and then went on from there, and you just keep doing all these really impressive things. And at the same time, you had created other passive income streams on the side of that, which we will get into. And I think a lot of it has probably come from that first action of saying, I'm going to graduate debt free so that I can create all these other passive income streams after college. And I'm sure you didn't think that when you were 17, but that's just what happens as you now had more money to create. I mean, put your money to work for you, so to speak, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I still worked throughout college whenever I could. I am a busybody. I need to do that. But instead of putting the money I made into payments for school or to books or anything like that, or to saving up to pay off my student loans, I was able to, like you said, put it to work for me. So I was saving it up. And as soon as I graduated, I was able to start some other passive income streams, and I did have to purchase a car. I was able to pay that off as well. And so it just enabled me to be in other ways debt free and create other passive income streams. So absolutely, it's 100% because I don't have those student loans sitting there.
Awesome. So let's get into this. I typically ask some questions in the beginning, but we'll get to those later because I want to talk about creating that passive income. So, and for those who don't know, passive income is what it sounds like, but it's that income that you don't have to actively go out and work for. You can essentially make money when you sleep. So that's always, I think, my biggest goal in life towards becoming quote unquote financially free. So I love that you have put the wheels in motion for several different avenues of this. And one of which I know because I know you personally, you bought was it a condo?
Yes, a condo in Atlanta.
And that was pretty quickly after you graduated, right?
Oh, yeah. So I graduated in May, and by the end of May, I had selected my place, and we closed by July. So it was immediate after college.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you went into this, were you thinking, so you use your condo as it's like a rental property. You get paid from your condo. But is that what you were thinking to begin with? You wanted to go find a rental property to invest in?
It actually was. So I knew that with my corporate job, our main headquarters were in Atlanta. So I knew that at the very least, I could at least live for free and get my mortgage paid for. So while I was in Atlanta, my intentions were buy a place there. You know, you'll be there for at least a year. You can live for free. But then beyond that, it was purely for a rental property. So yeah, from the beginning, that was my intention.
So you went out and you pretty much put a down payment on a condo, and then you have this monthly mortgage payment. And how many bedrooms is it?
It's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, which was also very intentional. I knew I didn't want to do 1 bedroom. These are all decisions that, you know, people can make, and I can go over, in my opinion, the steps through that. But
yes, please do.
yeah. So it's 3 bedrooms. And I think the logic behind that was, if I knew, so I have now my husband, then my serious boyfriend. Little did I know we were about to get engaged only, I think, a month after buying this. But I knew that if him and I were going to be in the master bedroom, I wouldn't want someone to feel like a third wheel, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. So a 2 bedroom wouldn't work. A 1 bedroom wouldn't be enough income for a rental property, in my opinion. 2 bedrooms, if you had a couple in the master, the third person would feel like an odd man out. And so that's where I was like, okay, a 3-bed, 2-bath would be perfect. And also 3 beds, 2 baths. If you have 3 separate people, of course, that's more income. And lastly, 3-bedroom, 2 baths are some of the most rentable properties when it comes to families. So I set my mind absolutely from the get-go on getting 3 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm. And then you had to go and get approved to buy a home, and like from a mortgage company. Was that complicated with not having had an income of, like, I don't know, they pull 5 years of history? Yeah. I mean, how did you make a statement of, like, believe me, I'm responsible, I can do this?
Yeah. And that was a challenge because, so this was 2013. So it wasn't that long after the crash. And so you would think that they would be super strict and not give a fresh college grad a mortgage. But I guess I proved worthy. But one thing that helped me was my contract with my job. So I was going into a 2-year program. So I kind of had a set contract saying, okay, she will be employed for at least 24 months. So that helped me a lot, having that set contract. But still, yeah, my work history, I always worked jobs here and there, but I didn't have one job for the last 2 years, which is typically their minimum is a 2-year history. So I would definitely suggest, if someone has the ability to have a 2-year work history, then that's great. If not, it's, in my opinion, a lot of extra paperwork, but we pulled it off. So, but definitely having that contract, that signed contract with an upcoming job, that helped a lot.
Yes. All right. So you get approved, you buy your place, and then did you end up moving to Atlanta?
I did. So yeah, we moved into the master, and then we got 2 roommates. They actually worked for my company. I reached out to HR and I said, hey, do you know anyone moving to Atlanta as well that's not from there? Would they be interested in living with us? And so we were able to find 2 roommates took over the other rooms. So we actually did not only live, we completely covered the mortgage. So we were technically living for free, and we actually made a little bit.
That is awesome. So not only did you graduate college debt-free, you bought your car and didn't need a loan for that?
I had a little bit of a loan, but within, I think, 4 months or so, I was able to pay that off. And that was because technically I wasn't paying for rent or anything like that. So I had additional passive income, disposable income remaining from my salary. So for example, when people graduate from college with debt, they have to pay those student loans, and they're also most likely going to be paying rent because they probably can't put down a down payment onto a property where they could rent it out to friends or whatever and live for free. So I kind of had a double benefit there, where I didn't have a loan payment and I also didn't have a rent payment because that was being covered by my roommates. So the disposable income helped me pay off my car quickly.
So to all the 17-year-olds out there, start applying for scholarships so you can open up these opportunities. But I just love how you still worked, then you were able to live for free, but you still did responsible things with your money on top of that. So it's not just like, all right, I don't have any debt. I don't have to worry about this. I'm going to just live life to the fullest. You know, I think it really says something when you can do responsible things with your money. So that's awesome. Let's continue down the rental property track just because I have a couple different more questions for you. One is, so you've moved since now. You don't live in Georgia anymore, but do you still have this condo?
Yeah. Yep.
So how do you go about finding tenants for your place?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And actually, if I could go one step back about choosing the place. So I think, and this ties into finding tenants, when I was searching for a property, there were two that I was between. And one was in a location that I wanted to live. I don't know if other people would want to. It was kind of more pricey and all this stuff. But it was technically better for me, I guess I would say. And then the other one, which is the one I got, was more rentable. So the way that I determined whether or not the properties were rentable is I actually posted the potential listings on Craigslist. And in the end, I told people, you know, we're not renting these out. But this was actually me testing the waters just to see how many responses I got. And I put a set price on the rent to see how much can I get for renting out these places. So I actually tested the water with possibly renting these places out to see the price point that they'd be interested in. So I made sure they were in great areas. I made sure that by posting on Craigslist, is it in a price point that would cover my mortgage plus some? And based on how many responses I got, that was how I knew, okay, this will be a hit. So that was, I think, making sure that the property is rentable in the first place is so key. If I had gone into the boondocks, I probably wouldn't have been able to rent it out so easily. So, and since I left, I've had no problems, knock on wood, renting out my place. So, I think that those kind of checks, those boxes that I needed to check, making sure that those were all met definitely has helped me. So then, and also another thing that a lot of people think about when they're choosing a property is, will this increase in value? And that's great, but I was always concerned with cash flow. I never focused on we'd call it if come, right? So sure, it'd be great if it increases in value and I can sell it down the road for more than I owe on it. But ultimately, sure, you want to make sure it's in a good area, but ultimately that's if come. What you really want to focus on is that monthly cash flow that you cannot deny that's giving you money, versus where if you were just betting on the area that it would increase, that's a whole different ballgame. So I was focusing on cash flow. So now to finding those tenants, I use a site called Roomster, and that site has been amazing. You have to create profiles. And so I use that to find people. And actually, when I was moving around, I used Roomster to find roommates for myself as well. And then I post it basically saying that I'm the owner, but I'm looking for people that I would want to live with. So that's always my rule of thumb, because I rent out the bedrooms individually. So it's not like I rent out all 3 rooms to a set of girls that were already planning on living together. I actually kind of matchmake roommates. And because of that, I'm able to charge a little bit more. But also because of that, I'm able to find tenants in all rooms that I know will take care of my place. So I do phone calls and Skype with them. And if I get a good vibe, if it's someone that I think I would want to live with, then we move on to the next step, which is just good contracts and making sure that all the girls, I usually stick with girls. I've had guys as well, but girls tend to be cleaner. Yeah. And I can relate better with girls, obviously being one. But I make sure that they are all okay with each other. But again, the rule of thumb where it's, would I live with them? It's kind of worked out. And some of them are so close now. So it's funny. I'm actually almost like a matchmaker for friends.
I'm going to move into your place.
If you do, I'm moving back because that was so fun.
Yes, me and you. You can just leave your husband behind. We'll just be roommates. It'll be fun.
That sounds great.
My last question relating to this is, now that you no longer live in the area where you own and rent out your property, how do you handle those emergency situations? And also, maybe you can answer this first. Would you recommend, say, like I live in Chicago and I could maybe find a rental property somewhere, that's a little bit cheaper, obviously. But would you recommend that? How do you handle those emergency situations? Because it's probably not as easy to get there and deal with it yourself.
Yeah, and Atlanta is a solid 6 to 7 hour drive because of their traffic. So it's not like I can just kind of take a day trip and pop in. So that is definitely a challenge, but I've kind of found vendors that I go to consistently, and those all came through recommendations. So because it's a condo, we do have an HOA that they have kind of suggested contractors, but I do think that word of mouth is so important, just making sure that they have good reviews. So for example, unfortunately, our HVAC went out, or it was on its way out. And so I had to get that replaced. But going back to being just money savvy and being frugal and making sure I save up and all this stuff, there are times when it's worth it to pay. And I think that when you have a property that you don't live by, you might want to pay a little bit extra just for the sanity and for the comfort, knowing that it was taken care of well, because you don't want to have to take that road trip. So I think that there are challenges. You might pay a little bit more for better contractors, but ultimately I have had no problems with it. So my tenants and we have a very open relationship. We can text and all that stuff. And that helps me as well. I tell them, if anything is wrong, this will not fall back on you. Just communicate it so I can fix it before it's a problem. And I think that open relationship with my tenants has definitely helped solve issues before they become drastic. So, and then as far as starting a rental out of your area, I'm not sure. I think that you have to have some knowledge of the area. That helped me pick a good area that's easy to rent out. So because I was in the area a lot, I was researching it, I was moving there, that helped me make an educated decision on where to buy a property. So I think that you should at least have a working knowledge of the area versus just saying, "Ooh, that area is cheap. Let me get a property there," because who knows what you're getting into. So I think that at the very least, you'd want to visit it a few times or maybe talk to people from there, or choose a location where you at least have family or friends that are from there that can give you an idea on where you'd want to buy and where you'd want to rent out. So I think that you should have at least some sort of connection to the location, just because that'll increase your opportunity for renting it out and selling tenants on wanting to live in your place and stuff, versus it just being something to flip. Now, if you have big money and you can just, hire out contractors and buy wherever, that might be a different story. I know people start new areas all the time, but as far as the situation that you and I are in, and probably most of your listeners, I'd say at least know the area.
Awesome. And this is something that I kind of took the same approach too. Is I bought my condo, and it's in Chicago, so it's a little bit different, but it's probably pretty similar to Atlanta, actually. And then I rent out a spare bedroom of mine, which helps me significantly cover my rent. So when you can get to that point where you're able to really diligently save up money for a down payment, it can turn into a really good investment just from a cash flow perspective of not having to, I'm saving money, but I'm also getting my rent paid for every single month. So that really helps. I want to move on now because you and your husband now own a different home, and you also use Airbnb. So can you share your experience using Airbnb? And I mean, you don't necessarily have to, but you do. Why do you do it? And what has this allowed you to do now?
Yeah, so great question. So my husband and I bought a property. We're in Charleston, South Carolina now, which is a booming area. So it was actually a pretty last minute decision to buy. We had like a month to find a place to rent, and rent is just insane here right now. And I looked at my husband, I was like, I know that we weren't thinking about doing this, but so this kind of goes in contrast to having your ducks in a row before jumping. But we were like, you know what, our mortgage is going to be the same, if not less than our rent. So maybe we should do it. So that kind of pushed us into this. But the thing is that we do know the area. We know that it's so rentable. We have the College of Charleston here, vacation spots here. So that made the decision all the more easy, simple, because we knew no matter what, at the very least, we'd be able to rent it out for more than what we owe on it. So, that kind of catapulted the decision. And then, yeah, most people, they're married, they want their privacy, which we enjoy, but that's why we do Airbnb versus a roommate. So even though we can afford the mortgage, why pay it if you don't have to? So Airbnb has made it so easy to make income when you want to, and that's what's so great. So we just rent it out when we want to. When we don't want any company, then we just don't accept any Airbnb people. But the money's great for paying off the house, but we bought kind of an older home. So we've used a lot of the money to pay for upgrades. So we're kind of remodeling it slowly and everything. Actually, we've just hit the mark that we need to redo another project. So it's kind of like, okay, when we hit a target for how much money we've made from Airbnb, that's when we do that next project. So we kind of only have one big one left. And I think that money after that will probably just go into cutting down the payments and paying off the house sooner. And that way we have more equity into it when we want to move on to the next big thing, or maybe buy a third property we can pull from the equity of these homes. So Airbnb, it's been so nice as far as just, I basically feel like we're upgrading it for free. And I love the people that I meet through Airbnb as well. So that's nice too, is meeting the people. So it was a very easy decision for us.
Awesome. Jocelyn, my most well thought out strategic friend. I want to, can I just marry into your guys' marriage? Just going to invite myself.
We have an extra room, so.
Yes, there we go. Let's talk about your last passive income stream, which you touched on briefly in the beginning, but it is your book that you wrote while you were working your full-time job. I think that, first of all, I'm so impressed that you were able to do that. But why might someone who works full-time want to write a book, and how did you go about it?
Sure. So I would think one of the main reasons for writing a book is, well, it's a great conversation piece and a great business card. To say that you have a book out there, people definitely find it an interesting conversation topic, and you can kind of meet some people that I would say it opens some doors that probably wouldn't have been opened otherwise. But secondly, for passive income. So for me, I've turned that book into an online course that's more effective with students. So I don't really drive sales for that book anymore. So, but it still brings in a decent amount for passive income. But I know people that are making thousands of dollars a month on their books, and they haven't done a thing. So I think passive income is a huge benefit of writing a book, or maybe even just getting their message out there, which is where mine started. So as far as getting started, I think the first and foremost thing that they need to do is decide, what do I want to write it on? And it has to be something that they're passionate about and something that they have no problem writing about, because they are going to reread their own book a million times before submitting it. So it has to be something that you love. And for me, it was so easy. I can't even tell you how many times I read my own book when proofreading it. But that's a big decision. And then also for self-publishing, there are lots of steps to go into that. And that's what I did. I self-published, but I did so through Amazon. And I knew the reason I decided on that was I knew that Amazon would do the publicity for me to an extent. So if it's a topic that they think people would search for, and there are search engines that they can actually use to see the search traffic on Amazon to see if it's a hot topic, which I highly recommend, proving that it will sell before actually taking the time to write it. But if they can self-publish through Amazon, that's a great avenue to get it out there, especially if it's a side thing. If this is a passive income stream, but it's a side gig, it's not their main career, maybe they have a full-time job otherwise, and this is just kind of a side project, then I would definitely suggest self-publishing it through Amazon so that Amazon does the publicity for it. But I think those are kind of the biggest steps for getting started.
And then when you have a full-time job, how did you take like 15, you could do just 15 minutes a day. Is that how you went about it? Or did you fall into a rabbit hole of book writing?
You know what? I was the person that I knew that if I went to work and came home and expected to work, there was no way I would get it done. I would be brain dead by the time I got home. So what I decided to do, and some people might completely hate this, but some people might thrive on it, is I decided to wake up an hour or two early every morning. So I just literally added in an hour or two plug into my morning where I would get it done before I even got ready. So if I ran late into book writing, it cut into my getting ready time versus the opposite, where if I took long getting ready, it would cut into my book writing time, if that makes sense. But if I could I got to the point where I could knock out 1,000 words in an hour. And so if I got a good hour of just cranking out writing, then by the end of it, it took me actually only like 6 weeks to write my book. It's not too long, but if you can get in a system where you're writing a good 4 days per week, 4 mornings per week, then you'd be shocked at how quickly you can knock out a book.
Awesome. I might have to try that.
Yeah.
I don't know what my book is going to be on, but I'm going to try it.
That can be a whole nother conversation. We can come up with an idea.
Yes, brainstorm. All right, we're going to get into the quick and dirty Q&A to wrap up the show. So these are just a few fast-paced questions. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, Jocelyn, what is the first thing you do in the morning?
I have a dog that is basically my child, so I let him out and deal with him. But beyond that, I make a cup of hot tea.
Yes, you gave up coffee. Are you still off of the cough?
You know what? They say it takes 30 days to make a habit, right? I think that's the saying. Mm-hmm. And so I made it 37 days without coffee, which meant I was drinking hot tea. And now I crave hot tea. I don't even crave coffee. So yeah, I'm still off it. I'll have a cup here and there, but for the most part, I actually am now on to tea.
Awesome. All right. What is your best money habit?
I would say that this is something that I'm still working on, but it's setting goals. But once I set those goals, it's enjoying it. So I'm very conscious about cash flow and how much I'm saving. Before I quit my job, I made sure I had enough money to make it X amount of months without bringing in a penny. Same with my business. I bootstrapped a lot of things to make sure it's a positive cash flow. So I make sure that cash is coming in, which is that's the best money habit. But then the next thing is, once you hit those goals, actually enjoy it, because sometimes you get addicted to that saving and seeing the cash add up. But you need to make sure that you're using your money for what it's actually for, which is enjoying life. So kind of the mix of the both, making sure you have positive cash flow. But once you hit those goals, treat yourself.
Yeah, of course. What are your 2 favorite resources to get money advice or inspiration for life? Definitely
books first, of course. And so I would say the first one is the 4-Hour Work Week. But that one kind of stemmed the entrepreneurial mindset, but now it's the Millionaire Next Door. So books are, of course, some of my favorite resources. And then the next thing is the Bible. So I don't want to get too religious on people, but I just think the Bible, aside from faith, it's just such good advice on how to be a good person, how to manage your money, how to overcome obstacles. There are just so many good lessons in there. So whenever I'm down or facing a tough time or facing a tough decision, I tend to go to that. So
awesome. All right. What are your 3 favorite apps on your phone?
Mint. So that is a money app, and I just love it. It's so easy to go through your transactions, make sure they're categorized right, or make sure that they're legitimate. So Mint is one that it's one of the first ones I download when I get a new phone. Secondly is Pandora. I know a lot of people are not big on Pandora anymore, but I'm all about it still.
You like that shuffle all the time.
I don't trust myself to make my own playlist. I don't know. So yeah, Pandora is number 2. And then the third is Pinterest. If I'm at the gym and I don't know what to do, I go to Pinterest. If I'm remodeling something and I don't have an idea, I go to Pinterest. So Pinterest is my jam.
Yes. I make my grocery lists on Pinterest because I'll just find the recipes and pin them to my board. And then I just go through the recipes when I'm at the grocery store to find what I need.
Oh my gosh.
That's probably really inefficient, but
no, that's awesome. You probably eat very well.
The best part about that is I'm at the gym picking recipes, because I'm just hungry and
oh gosh, that would be so deadly. I went shopping last night hungry, and I don't even know what I bought. I brought home so much stuff.
Oh, yes, me too. What is one guilty pleasure that you spend your money on, or how do you treat yourself?
Oh my gosh, travel. Travel is where I spend it, and you know what? I enjoy it, so that's okay. I don't really spend much in between, but travel, hands down, and that's where my husband and I connect. We are both the same way, where travel's our guilty pleasure. So
good. How many scholarships did you apply for throughout your high school, college experience?
I don't know. If I included the scams, it would be a ton. But once I got well-oiled, my my system figured out, I would honestly say only a few dozen. It really wasn't that many once you know what to apply to.
And then after a few dozen, they just multiply and add up, and
yeah,
you're good to go. All right, my last question for you is, what does living a wealthy life mean to you?
I would say a wealthy life means the freedom to do what you want. So I don't need $1 million in the bank. I'll take it. But I just need enough to be able to travel when I want to, enjoy the people around me, enjoy if I want to take a day off and spend it with my husband, then that's great. But that's a wealthy life to me, is just the freedom to do what you want.
And you have created that for yourself by giving yourself that ability from being strategic and really well thought out, from the scholarships that you did to the scholarship system that you've created. So as we wrap up, tell us about the scholarship system, your course, and your book, and how my listeners can keep in touch with you and possibly work with you in the future.
Sure. So the scholarship system, we've touched on it briefly, but it's a 6-step system on how to secure scholarships for college. So we talk about just how to avoid taking out student loan debt and still be able to get the education that you want. And it started off as a book. The book is now a couple years old, but we've turned it into a course with videos and templates and cheat sheets and worksheets. And it's just it's much more interactive. So that's the scholarship system. And if they're interested in checking it out, they can go to thescholarshipsystem.com. So don't forget the. And there's tons of information. There's tons of free information if they want to check it out. And then as far as getting in touch with me, if they reach out to info@thescholarshipsystem.com, they can email me. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest. Just look up the scholarship system, and we're in all of those areas. So if they're looking for any kind of resources, I'd be happy to point them to the right area.
Fantastic. Jocelyn, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. That's a wrap with my interview, episode 51 with Jocelyn Paonita Pearson of The Scholarship System. And if you liked any of the things that she shared with us in this show, head on over to the show notes at tesswicks.com/podcast/episode 51 to get all of the great deets there. Now, if you are looking for someone to bounce ideas off of, or to make sure that you're on the right financial journey and path for yourself, go head on over to tesswicks.com and check out some of my coaching solutions. I have a one-on-one solution, and I only open up a few slots every single quarter to work with people one-on-one through their financial story and financial journey. We get everything in order. So go ahead and book a 30-minute discovery call. I would love to chat with you, answer some questions that you have, and see how we could work together in the future. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now go have a wonderful week.